Welcome, everyone. I now call the board meeting for the Wiseburg Unified School District for December 14th. Got the date right, 2022 to order. It's that in the past. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you in our community, members of the community, our educators, our staff, our cabinet here. And as I've been saying for 2 years, my fellow volunteer board members. And I mention volunteer because you guys give so generously of your time as volunteers. And I want folks to know that there's no compensation here and appreciate all the time and effort. And there's a lot of time and effort. I'd like to also share that I will remain on the board and thrilled to be on the board. This is my final board meeting serving as presiding over as president of this body. It has been a privilege, an honor, and I'm thrilled to stay on the board. And I'm thrilled to turn it over to my better looking colleague, assuming he's voted in later this evening. It is our regularly scheduled board meeting tonight. We will swear in our three newly elected and re-elected members. We'll have a STAR assessment presentation. Thank you very much. And our new board president, vice president, representatives, and committee positions will be redistributed among our board in organization. We'll also finally review our first interim budget report. So lots on the agenda tonight. Along those lines, I'd like to have an adoption of the agenda at this time. May I have a motion? Have a motion. Thank you. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Dr. Harvick, where are you? It has been my pleasure to us be partners in the flag system for roughly 2 years. So Nelson, you gotta have a new partner, buddy. So Dr. Harvick.
Hand on our heart. Ready to begin. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We will turn shortly to public comments now, as we always do. But before we do reflect on the share your thoughts, and of course, we encourage everyone to share your thoughts. So we want to learn from you. There were 2 thoughts that were mentioned regarding insurance email that I need to again review with Dr. Silvers. And then a question about the recess time on 138th Street that you may want to address for us in your time of sharing, Dr. Silvers as well. Sure. This time we'll turn to public comments. And again, according to board bylaw 9323C, individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes each to address the board. Ms. Subaki, are there any board comments at this time?
We do have one person online who would like to speak. His name is Gabriel.
I'm sorry, real quick, Dr. Bowman, I think we do have to, we have an employee that requested to speak during public comment. So,
Yes.
Could we just, you as the president would ask if Mark White is.
Thank you very much for the reminder. Mark White, if you are here to address the comments you wish to make, you're welcome to do that at this time. Hearing not from Mr. White, we will proceed with the rest of the public comment. Thank you, Dr. Silvers.
Yeah. Can we slide over Gabriel? Allowed to speak. Jason, you can do that or you want me?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for him to accept it.
Okay.
Start video.
Hello,
Hello. Welcome.
thank you. My name is Gabriel Callan, and I go to Juan de Anza Elementary on Hendry Avenue. One of the things that I would like to try to change is to change the shortened days to Friday, because at my old school, it was at Wednesdays, and it made everyone a lot more happy. The students, the parents, the faculty, the staff, and I asked my mom if she would post something on Facebook with the widespread moms, which day they would want the shortened days to be on, and they said on Fridays instead of Wednesdays. And so I also asked a couple students, and they also said that they would want it to be on Fridays too. And it would also would make us have a longer weekend. And it would also help the students with the sports for when they needed to rest, so they could get more rest, get more practice in. And I know that it would be a big change, and that it would be hard to change. But I still would like to try to change that so everyone would be happier and have longer weekends. So, how can you guys help me to change it?
Well, Gabriel, you make a very good first step by communicating with us, and the Brown Act precludes us from actually engaging in any conversation about it, but we certainly hear you and we'll take it under advisement. So thank you very much for your presentation tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Subaki, any other?
There are no other public comments.
All right, well, thank you very much from the public. We now move to item 3.3, administration of the oath of office. This is kind of excited as we have 3 newly / re-elected board members who are joining us this evening, and thank you for doing so.
Stuck with me now.
What's that?
You're stuck with me now.
And amen. Ms. Martinez, why don't we go first with you, and I think Dr. Silvers, you're going to be doing the oath for Martinez, right?
Yeah, I think we do it. Great, yeah.
Sure. Hi. So, Mr. Martinez, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Nelson Martinez, do solemnly swear that
I, Nelson Martinez, do solemnly swear
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies,
will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic.
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion.
and I will well and faithfully discharge
I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which
the duties upon which
I am about to enter.
I'm about to enter.
Congratulations. You'll see why shortly. I'm so excited he took the oath. Come with us. Very exciting.
Thanks, sir.
All right. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name, do solemnly swear that
I, Roger Banuelos, do solemnly swear that
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and I will well and faithfully discharge
that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And now Rebecca Hamburg Cappy. For the first time,
For the first.
please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name,
I, Rebecca Hamburg Kathy,
do solemnly swear that
do solemnly swear that
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and I will well and faithfully discharge
and I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Well done.
Thank you.
It's all good. A lot of congratulations going to happen this meeting.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
And well deserved. Thank you again, and congratulations to you all. It is a privilege being with you on this body. We next move to district updates, the WSD DV Schools Partnership. Suffice it to say, the partnership continues, the relationships continue. We have meetings scheduled for January, and we'll be having further conversations. Let's move now to information from the board. Ms. Martinez, why don't we start with you, sir?
All right, a few items. I first want to start out and congratulate Roger and Rebecca as well for the election and obviously for the oath of office that just took place. So congratulations. It's an honor to serve with the both of you, but it's really an honor to serve with our entire board and our colleagues. It's an honor, and I also want to thank the community for the support as well over the years. I have a few items tonight. I also want to take a moment here to celebrate this moment with the passage of Measure EE bond that was officially certified, I believe, about a week ago now. And just I want to take a moment to thank our community. Our community has been so gracious to support our bond over the years, and I also know that it was, there was some community that didn't support the bond. I can tell you that our colleagues here will make sure that we're good stewards of the bond, and I want to make sure that that is shared and reiterated, and I think we're going to start doing that. One of the first action items is to engage the Citizen Oversight Committee. So that is something really important. We'll make sure that those funds are used as we promised in Measure EE bond ballot. I also want to take a moment to recognize Rebecca for her leadership, and Blake Silvers and Michelle Legaspi from the community that were really involved. Thank you again. You headed up that bond measure. That was no easy feat. There was a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of sacrifice from your family. So thank you very much. Appreciate that. And to my colleagues who were involved in behind the scenes supporting that. So I want to thank them, and obviously the community again for their support. Had a chance to attend CSBA. CSBA is the California School Board Association conference that takes place. Both Roger and I attended that with Blake. It's a great conference. Whenever you get to spend a lot of time with Blake and talk school business, but more importantly, what you get out of that conference too is the networking that takes place with other school districts, and you learn a great deal. And that is something that you can't put a price when you can start interacting with school districts and really learn some of the best practices and some of the things that they're doing at their school district. So that it's invaluable, and we get to bring that back. So that was pleasant. Also, I think we attended a workshop on the kind of the state of the economy. What I discovered is that it's an uncertain time. I've gone to a conference and it was a completely different message than the message that we heard at CSBA. So all I could say is the economists are uncertain about the economy, and that we'll see what happens, right? Is that fair to say? So and then I also wanted to share a little bit with my colleagues. Actually, Neil joined me on that. We attended the Dana Middle School the other day. We did a site visit, and This was a unique site visit. It wasn't a site visit where we were gonna go see a performance or a play. It was a site visit where we actually were paying attention to the school site, paying attention to the facilities, kind of assessing the facilities, and boy, we recognize that it's been 15 years. And the classrooms are just certain things that are that are getting outdated. So it was a good walk. So I recommend to my colleagues that we do that for each of the school site visits. It's a little different when you're actually going with a different lens. So that was valuable. And I think that's going to help us down the path when we start really engaging our master plan and so forth. And then last but not least, well, actually, I have two more comments. My next comment is really to Dr. Goldman, who has served president for the last 2 years. I want to thank you for the leadership the past 2 years. It's been some challenging times, but one thing that you did right off the bat is we revisited our mission, and we talked about our pillars that really were that developed from that, and that's aligned the board where we're going, and it's helped staff and cabinet to understand where we're with the direction of the sport. So I just want to thank you for the leadership that you've had in the last 2 years. I know it's been challenging, but it's also been extremely invaluable in terms of how we're moving, and that's so important for our superintendent and our staff. So thank you, and it's been again an honor to serve under your leadership. And then last but not least, and sorry I'm a little long-winded today, but just wanted to wish everyone a safe and joyous, happy holiday with family and friends.
Thank you, Nelson. Thank you very much. Well, since there's no time left, we will. Your thoughts.
I'm usually the one that goes.
Oh, your microphone too.
Yeah.
I want to thank Nelson for capturing all the comments we could possibly need to make this evening. So anyway, I'll duplicate, I guess, just say ditto to the items that Nelson mentioned, especially for the bond. Thanks to the community, Rebecca Blake and Michelle Gatsby and all the board and so on. It's a great opportunity for our district to move forward. And I think that's something our community has always valued about the board and about our community is we move forward at a pace that's measured and that's very pledging our loyalty to the district and to the community. We don't move too fast, but we move fast enough to keep up with the needs of the district as well as the needs of our community. I also wanted to mention that whereas the board will change leadership roles and Neil will breathe a sigh of relief to not be president anymore. It's a huge job, and thank you, Neil. Blake doesn't get to change anything. Blake has been trained a new president. So as we move forward as a board and take on different and perhaps keep some of the same leadership roles, I want to thank Blake for staying in the leadership role that he has and for helping us all do better as a board and supporting our community along the way. So thank you to Blake. Thank you to Neil for being president. And looking forward to electing our members to different roles as we go forward. I also want to wish everyone a happy holiday. Why would I wish you a bad holiday? I wouldn't do that. So just take care, be safe. I just came back from the East Coast and I'm really happy to be back in California. I can say that. So even if it is chilly here, it's not outrageously cold. So for what that's worth. Anyway, happy holidays, Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's, everything. And thanks to the board, thanks to Blake, our staff, for a great 2022, and we'll move forward. That's it.
Thank you. Why don't we go on the end here with Ms. Gatsby?
Sure, thank you. So first, I just want to say how grateful I am for the opportunity to continue to serve on the Weisberg Intervention School Board for the next 4 years. In my application to the board back in February, I noted my special interest in working with the district to more effectively engage the community and our school families, and really excited about things that we've already seen happen and to continue to be able to do that in the months and years ahead. You know, I really believe that I'm here to work on behalf of all of the students and families in the district, not just my own. It's an obligation and responsibility that I take very seriously, and I'm grateful for that chance. So I'll just reiterate the thanks that Nelson had to the community for your support of Measure EE. The election was certified on December 5th by Los Angeles County. And they affirmed the passage of Measure EE with just shy of 57% of the yes votes. The votes were yes. By passing the measure, you, our community, have helped to protect the quality of education. We're able to provide our students your vote of confidence in our district. Will help our schools to continue to rank among the best in the state. And I look forward to getting to work implementing the facilities master plan with my colleagues here on the board in as transparent and prudent a manner as possible. I'm so proud of this work and of the effort and the work that's ahead. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank both Michelle Legaspi and Eddie Urenda, who was our other co-chair on the thing, and all of the folks who work in the district who came out and helped us knock doors, and Dr. Silvers for his many volunteer hours at nights and on weekends away from his own family to ensure that our families have the best schools possible. So very grateful for that. And I also just want to say that I love hearing from the students in our community about issues that concern them. I actually started my own legal career by drafting a petition to the school board to change a policy at my elementary school. So I really encourage this form of civic engagement and hope that all of our community members feel welcome to bring issues of concern within our schools to the board. Thank you.
Mr. Banuelos.
Thank you, Dr. Goldman. First and foremost, I'd like to thank our community for the re-election. It's such a pleasure to serve on the board here. It truly is a privilege and an honor, something that I will always cherish. I've had the privilege now of being on the board for 13 years. And I think Nelson is the longest running tenure. He's a 19, Nelson. Really aged me too. 16, 17.
I just pictures on the wall.
The pictures don't look the same. Time does go by. But it is definitely an honor and a privilege of my life to serve on the board, and I do it freely, I do it willingly, not only for, as Rebecca mentioned, for my own kids, but I consider all our students that are within our district as my kids, if you will. I mean, we really do take that stewardship, that responsibility, that trust from our community and our parents incredibly serious. So I'll reiterate, we ask a lot of questions, or I should say, I ask a lot of questions. Know that it's definitely coming from a standpoint of understanding, because I think we have a fantastic and beautiful staff in leadership, and Dr. Silvers and our cabinet and our teachers. But that's also our role, right? To ask questions, and you provide great answers too. So thank you so much for all your hard work and effort. Just know that it's very appreciated. We don't say it all the time, but when we can, we'd like to do that as well. I'd like to thank Dr. Goldman. Neil, thank you for administering my oath of office. It means a lot, as well as colleagues. I think it's not necessarily typical, but we have a great camaraderie, great friendships within the board. I think that's what makes our district strong as well, is having the ability to communicate and speak to each other, very candid, very open, to move things forward in the district. And on that note, I'd like to compliment Neil for your tenure as board president. One of the things that I really particularly enjoyed in your leadership style is how inclusive you have always been. Whether it's making a phone call or making sure that everybody has enough time to dissect something, have a conversation, that inclusivity is a key pillar as well in the district. And you definitely have demonstrated it with our board in our working dynamics. So thank you. Thank you for that, truly. And of course, there's a lot of other things that thank you for that. And then at the end, just happy holidays to everybody. Please be safe and take care of your health. You know, because everything revolves around being healthy, and if you can be healthy, everything kind of follows from that. So I wish you a very safe and happy holiday season.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you for your kind thoughts. You know, as is my last term here or position in this role, I was reflecting on why we're here. And got a great reminder in attending the Cabrillo, Anza, and Dana, sorry, I missed 138's, holiday shows and programs. And if you want an inspiring reminder about why we're here, it's seeing these kids on stage, not knowing what they're doing a great job of what they're doing, but having the opportunity to be up there and learn and grow. And then as you watch going from the very little kiddos to the middle schoolers, and even had some Da Vinci high schoolers participate, and the band was just blow your mind impressive. Pretty fun to see and a good inspiration. Along those lines, as Nelson mentioned, we had the opportunity of touring Dana, and not only seeing the facilities, which you commented about very well. I also want to mention we got to tour some classrooms and see teachers in actions. And first of all, my compliments to you, the teachers we did visit, for pretending we weren't there and doing a great job ignoring us. So good for you. And just also the skill you demonstrated in inspiring our kids, creating great engaging lessons, and watching the kids participate even as much, if not more, than the teachers, which is, of course, we're learning how. So that was very fun to see and inspiring. Also, as my term ends, I wanted to thank my fellow board members for their dedication, your wisdom, your feedback, your pushback, your ideas. Been a great experience and learning to me. I want to thank Dr. Silvers for, I counted, hundreds of hours of conversation. We have not always agreed, but we've always stimulated great conversation. I have cherished that. It has been a privilege working with you and learning from you and learning together. We navigated, most of my term was during most of COVID. I defer to COVID czar as a reference. But that's uncharted territory. And it was a pretty interesting time for all of us with no precedent to fall back on. One thing I'm particularly proud of with this board that you may remember, and I'll be brief, was we actually decided to shut down the schools before the state mandated us to. And we may be among the only who did that in LA County or beyond that. And I'm proud that we had the courage to do what was right for our kids and validated the very next day, but we didn't know it. And that was a difficult decision that we made, and proud of that decision. And I think that's a benchmark for what we're trying to do. Remembering we're here for our kids, and that's why that's why we do what we do. So, yeah, I think that's enough for me. Happy holidays again to everybody. And now let's turn to our cabinet. Thank you also, by the way, to the cabinet. Your dedication, your perseverance, your fidelity to duty, your creativity during this time, impressive. And as I look at the cabinet that's before us today, I think this is the first time in the history of our school district that there's a doctor in front of all of the names of the cabinet, which is kind of interesting and impressive in itself. So I see Ms. Mazzarella's name is indirectly here, but I don't see her here. Is she making a presentation online?
No, she will not be.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm not skipping her because I want to give her that opportunity. So we will move then to our Assistant Superintendent, Administrative Services and CDO, Dr. Hasty.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, for me, I was able to get to one of the holiday. Oh, should I get on the mic? So I can hear.
Standing room only in these events. So I didn't say the parents, I don't usually be reminded that these were fun. You were all there.
And I'm going to have Mr. Nava stand up just to give the update on the facility as well. But yeah, just overall, I do want to give a shout out to the maintenance crew. I was at Anza today at one of the holiday performances, and I was approached by a teacher, and they're just like, I need to make sure you know that the maintenance workers here are amazing. And you're looking around the site, and it's incredibly beautiful. It's clean. It's just, and so just for them to really come out there and just say that, I can't, I have to say that now because it's just really amazing when people are recognizing the great work that's going on in the sites. Again, as I go to these sites, I look at them much differently from when I was an instructional leader, and I'm looking for those things. I was also able to visit a classroom, get to see some of our programming. But overall, right now, the big next steps is just looking at, moving forward and how we're going to be looking at our facilities usage and just rental thereof, and also field space usage. So those are some next steps for us that we're going to be focusing on. And then, Mr. Nava, you want to?
Good evening.
it's updated.
Jason, we see it on the screen too.
Yeah, I just sent it to you. I shared it with you. Nope, this other one, there's another one that came to you that was shared. The FMO update.
Don't touch that down.
Well, good evening. This is the update for what has happened and hopefully what's to come. So just a quick overview of what we should be expecting to do within the next few years. I went ahead and just did a quick breakdown site by site and what we should be looking at. Of course, for 138, HVAC is a top of the priority. Again, those units are 99. The blacktop, we are hoping to get slurried and striped this weekend, actually. Look into the roofing, the lighting within the next couple of years, as well as the cameras, and you see the tree planters there. Those two large trees on the blacktop, they are overgrowing their planters. So I'm gonna get an arborist out there and see how strong the root system is, hopefully to keep it. Break out those planters and then just do like a mound with turf over it, just a more usable space for the students. That'd be something cool for that blacktop. Again, their carpet is older, but it's been maintained well. So we should look into that for 3 to 4 years. The portables, hopefully get a modular building in the back right there. Not sure if that's suggested or not, but something we should look into. Again, main building renovation, security and fire. Look into making it into one company, just a lot simpler for many people and facilities. And then
Does that cost, I know that's specific to 138, but that's pretty consistent. You're saying a consistent security and fire across the entire district,
correct.
not just.
Correct. And then again, rekeying when we have the opportunity to get into one key system, because right now we have about 3 different key systems across the country. Wanda Anza, look to seal their blacktop areas, hopefully this summer. Look into replacing HVAC systems 1 to 2 years. Same for roofing and flooring and camera systems. Those camera systems were installed in 2001, so we are nearing the end of their lifespan. So we should look into replacing some of the ones that have been giving us.
Back up for a second, just for the
yes.
keying. What kind of, are we looking at technology keying or are we still using old fashioned?
So there's option for both, right? So for the Schlage system, you'll have the original key in case it does fail, but they have some that have the fob enter and some that we're able to lock down remotely. Yes. So the system that I've been looking at is the Schlage system. And that's the rekeying is just a lot easier. And then distributing keys easier, making the keys. Right now we're cutting keys manually and it's a headache. You got to get the machine calibrated. Sometimes that key doesn't work. So with the punch system, it's a manual punch system. You just punch it and the key just comes out uniformed.
Not to speak out of turn here, I think that, we've had this discussion, obviously, this is a larger conversation we want to look at.
Yeah, that was my point. I want to make sure we have that larger conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's looking in the totality of, what's out there in terms of technology. I know I've had a chance.
So it's just rekeying, but we don't have a specific plan yet.
My guess is we won't rekey. I mean, if I were to guess now.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we're having that conversation
Yeah, absolutely.
and it's not just.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Juan Cabrillo, we're looking at the asphalt camera system first, carpeting, HVAC next. Those systems, I believe, were installed. Those are the newest systems. Between 2000 and 2008 is when those systems were installed. And then again, the security and fire, rekeying 1 through 5, and then the roofing is still in good shape. So 5+ years, we should reassess and see the needs for Cabrillo. But overall, that campus is in good shape. To Dana Middle, the planners, I know we're just trying to knock that project out. It's just something that's been there for a while. Camera system within the next couple of years. I know we've had Verkada come out and assess Dana early this year. It was just at a certain cost and we were unsure with the bond measure where we're gonna go. So now we can bring them back and reassess the site needs. Their asphalt, the crack fill, since it is such a large area, the cracks are just, they're expanding, so get in there. Hopefully this summer when, or if we do Anza, they can go ahead and include the crack fill for Dana Middle. And then seal that within 4 years. HVAC systems, those are in, majority are 2006 installed. We should start looking into replacing them around then. Rekeying again, 1 through 5, security, same thing, we should have a further discussion, and the roof overall is in good shape. So we can reassess that within 5+ years.
So Jonathan, that planner system, I know we had met as a facilities team, and there was a question about leveling, you know, and Dr. Goldman, Mr. Martinez went to the site. There's a question about filling it and leveling it as opposed to keeping it frame style. Have you had any?
Yeah, so the contractor that quoted us the best, I had him come out and reassess for the 8-inch lift for the base. And it's gonna be about $17,000 more to do the 8-inch lift, to make it level, to readjust the drip line and to lift the valve boxes and just make it so that the drainage is appropriate for the tree as well. For all of them, yes. So total, it'll be about $75,000 versus the $58,275 that we were initially quoted.
Did they all have that ventilation, the water system? I know some, it seemed like some did, some didn't.
I think I just saw it. Oh, you're talking about the drip system.
Not the drip system, but the access.
The access, yeah, I saw on one of them.
Right.
I don't know how many you have.
Yeah, they all do.
They all do.
Yeah, for the irrigation.
They all like a dome looking valve.
That's,
Yeah, I
no,
just saw
the
it.
dome itself, that's for drainage. So that's in case it
Every-
flooded, yeah,
Every planner has that.
yeah, but some of them, the kids knocked out that dome. So it was covered and kind of hard to spot, so they're gonna go.
Never seeing one ball box. Okay,
Yeah, so there's a few out there.
that's disappointing.
So the facilities and maintenance projects that we brought attention to, of course, the completed projects are the HVAC repair at 138th for the mini split, the district-wide tree trimming. The upcoming projects are the Dana softball, baseball field repair this winter break. And then the Anza backpack brackets. It's all dependent upon the delivery of them. They are expected to get them at the end of the month. So if that happens, hopefully I can get them here on a weekend and then just knock it out for us. Slurry seal for 138th will happen this weekend. So they're gonna come in, access the blacktop, seal it and stripe it for us. Dana Black planters there, they will be 75-275 from RM. That is with it being level to the top block, without will be 58-275. Anza planters, that's another discussion we can have, whether it be a couple of years from now, we can try to put something in there to where it's still kid friendly. Some projects that are not assigned funding are the paper dispensers. So I initially was going to put them on a couple board meetings that got canceled. And unfortunately, Kimberly Clark raised the prices on the dispensers, raising the prices a few grand. So it's going to be about $17,000 now to get those paper dispensers throughout Anza and Cabrillo. And then the Versa Court system for 138 to be $26,601 to be charged from deferred maintenance.
And Jonathan, can you just speak to the conversion? Is it difficult for getting the supplies of jumbo rolls, or jumbo rolls more effective?
So they're more cost effective. You don't have to replace them as often. It's not as easy to grab a handful of the multi-folds that we currently have. So just time with replacing the dispenser, just more efficient. So over time, we will see cost saving over paper goods. When I was in charge of custodial at Newhall, the two things that affected my budget the most were paper and bags. So the moment you get those addressed, you're going to see cost savings immediately.
So that's kind of like becoming our district standard.
Correct. Correct.
So we, not that we're doing any near-term capital improvement projects in terms of restrooms, but those are the things we want to capture in terms of district standard.
Correct.
Yeah, it's just some basics. I mean, that's where we are. Thanks, John. Just some basics. That's where we are right now. As far as deferred maintenance, we did take the board suggestions from last time just because we were getting pretty low on that. And remember, we did have, more money in RRM. So, again, budgets, this is, you're gonna hear a theme for tonight, they're ever changing and, we do have new things that come in every now and then, but that's where we are as of today. And that's it, I think, for this slide.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, and I just have one comment. It kind of goes on to the point that I think Dr. Silvers and Dr. Goldman were bringing on. Is in something, you laid it out really nicely what we need to do at each of the respective campuses and the timeline. I think that's great. I think as part of the facilities committee, what we could do is ultimately, I think for the benefit of the board is start identifying where those costs are for all those items, so that we can plan it out within the next, whether it's next year, the next 5 years, 10 years, right? But also too is some of these projects, as Dr. Goldman Silvers we're talking about in terms of security, team, some of these items, we're going to want to make sure that we're looking at the long term and really referring back to the master plan, and making sure that, we have a long-term outlook in terms of what we're trying to do. So I think those are things that we certainly want to take a closer look at, because you've identified some projects there that I think we're going to kind of have a long-term objective to it, which will help in the long run. So it might be premature to start some of those projects from a maintenance standpoint if we're not having that conversation from a long-term perspective. So I think that's the point you're bringing. And one of the things I wanted to mention is that we've talked to a few districts nearby where they've implemented some of these systems, so we can go take a look at them. And
With various.
yeah. And each of the systems, there's pros and cons to it, so we can learn from it.
So I have a few numbers down. One thing that contractors do not want to even try to touch are plumbing and electrical. So it's just a matter of getting them out here to give me an idea of an estimates. But as far as flooring, security, some roofing systems and all that, there are numbers attached that we can share or discuss at a further date.
I know, and this is a question for Dr. Hasey. I know DSA makes these expenses that I'm about to reference off the chart roofing. And I know we mentioned a number of 5 years plus on a couple of our school sites. What is our funding capacity for those?
For the bigger projects?
Yeah, that's among the biggest projects on that list.
So for roofing, I was actually, so we have currently 138 has reached its life, right? So it's replaceable essentially, and as well. So 138, I believe it's 2018, so we're a couple of years, behind. Anza was 2020, and I may be off a year or two, but just
The target dates.
of when they should have been based on when they were produced, when they were constructed. Then Dana 2027, and then Cabrillo's 2032. So we have, this time period that we want to plan for that. Part of that was part of our master plan that we would then want to budget, and allocate those funds for those capital projects within our master plan. And then, then for the next 10 years, we replace all four roofs in 10 years. Over 10 years.
Yeah, I just want us to do everything possible to have long-term planning, long-term funding preparation so that we maximize the resources we have and aren't surprised.
I think too, some of the things, that Jonathan put on that list, when you look at VersaCore as opposed to, it's lighter and easier on asphalt. You're not going to see the breakage as much as you may. It's also safer when you're looking at fiberglass backwards. We saw those at Dana. I know that the team was able to see them. We talked about putting those up at Anza as well.
They're beautiful. Yeah, that was fun, isn't it?
Maybe not be, as Nelson was saying too, a district standard that we want to put those more long-term, plexiglass, that's fiberglass?
Yeah,
One of the
no,
glasses.
plexiglass, yeah.
And so looking at that, but yeah, I do think that we want to take a look at some of those projects long-term and then get in the master plan. So that, the roof.
And then security cameras is a conversation that we're having from a long-term perspective. Obviously, that's
I think a choice are well intended, well thought out, and it's not replaced because we made it long term, right?
You know, we're in a really good situation. I'm gonna put him on the spot. Amir's back here as well, and our new director of technology.
Thank you, Amir, for the better camera too.
So I guess part of the conversation of 2022 have technology implications, network implications, especially when we're looking at locking systems, when we're looking at camera systems, looking at new network systems, it all has to work and talk. So I think that as we're dealing with facilities, we're dealing with technology, we're dealing with, district office staff, having to put together these systems in a way that's, that they talk and operate efficiently together. So it's a team effort.
I have a question about the routine maintenance and the deferred maintenance. Do those budgets roll forward if they're not used in a particular year, right?
Correct.
Okay, so.
Sorry.
So looking at roofing and so on, is that roofing is considered a capital project, I suppose? Does that need to be bond money? Or can it be a combination of both? A combination of like RRM as well as bond?
I would recommend keeping it separate and make it either, if we're gonna do a capital project like that, we need to make a decision on that's a bond project and keep them separate from each other.
I think maybe the question, if I may throw in, is we have bond funds. It's one of the things we put in the bond to use for this. Can we budget such that we have a 20-year life on this, that we are putting away deferred maintenance money such that it's paid for? We don't want to have to need, is that kind of where you're going?
Well, it kind of is where I'm going, because as we were working on the bond, the community was questioning, well, why aren't you thinking ahead? Why do we need a new bond for roofs? Why aren't we budgeting forward and planning for when we need new roofs so that you have enough money to do that?
The board has the right to do that with Fund 14, and that's where our deferred maintenance is, and they would have that oversight.
Okay,
I think maybe what we're asking is a projected plan
right.
to cover that. What do we need to fund 14 with annually, such that we're covering these things into the future?
That's actually my point, I guess, is since there's no penalty to roll the money forward. I think would be a good idea for us to figure out, and Jonathan's so good at planning and looking forward to what the sites need sort of near term and then maybe into the future. Could we look at our budgeting going forward to include some of these projects so that the bond money will sort of stretch farther, if you want to use that expression, so that we'll have more cognizance over bigger projects and more options for how we pay for them.
So, maybe, you don't have to answer this question now, but I think one thing that would be valuable is to share, and that you don't have to do this now, you can do it later, is share with the board what your deferred maintenance budget is each year and what your restricted routine maintenance funds are each year. Because like on the restricted, that obviously carries over. Because I think what we're gonna find out, and we can certainly as a board decide what we want to, but it's kind of like college. You can't save enough for ultimately replacing that, but you can certainly set aside to minimize it search dollars. So I think.
I mean, I'd like to know what that number is.
Yeah.
So, all right, we can't do it, but what can we do? What is needed to do it would be the starting.
Yeah, and so I think if we can find out kind of like what the typical deferred maintenance one is per year and the restricted routine, and then share that with the board, and then we can certainly make some.
And what we need to fund. I think roofing is just that long.
20 years from now, what will a roof cost 20 years from now?
And all of our roofs.
Yeah.
There's certainly been funds to that. I did want to clarify too, you have your deferred maintenance account and you have your routine restricted maintenance. Typically, you want that routine restricted maintenance, 3% that we put in every year. Our operating expenses, you kind of want that to cover that year. So that idea of it is that you're doing this routine maintenance on our facilities on a year-to-year basis. We'd want to bring that to the board sometime in July, maybe early in July, start our fiscal year as a school district and give you the year's amount allocation, and then we would have projects that we want to do in each of the school sites. And the idea is that then it's preventing some of the deferred, maintenance, or we're allowing the deferred maintenance projects to push out. We're keeping our facilities, whether it be striping and slurry and seal. That's a good example of a routine restricted maintenance project. So we usually like to exhaust those, and some of our custodians and maintenance crews actually funded out of that account. And then, anyway, so that, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, I think this is a great exercise through the Facilities Committee so that then we can bring it back to the board, and share it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Dr. Dougal, our Assistant Soup of Human Resources. A few other hats.
Yes. Good evening. First, the Human Resources hat. Tonight's board agenda for the classified personnel report. Happy to report that we are recommending 4 instructional aides for hire. And those 4 are all from the El Camino job fair that was in November. So we just want to another shout out or thank you to Holly Mitchell's office for putting that together for us. And so we were able to, there's still more coming, but those are the 4 that we were able to turn the paperwork in on time and get ready for this board meeting. And so I just want to let you know that that's for the, there are 4 names on there. Also, can't complete my report without COVID. We are sending home test kits today, tomorrow, and Friday. The messaging has gone out as well, similar to Thanksgiving break and all the other long breaks that we've done is through Jonathan Nava's help. We've actually got enough testing kits to go home to everybody. And so we are expecting students and staff to test on January 2nd prior to returning to school on January 3rd. Once again, this is kind of a community or Wiseburn family effort that if everyone does this, we can slow the spread of transmission on our campuses. And so it has been a busy 2 weeks when it comes to COVID and RSV and the flu. We've had a lot of absences, both on the student level and staff level. And so if we can please test. And if you're sick, please stay home. That would be greatly appreciated. Also want to take the time right now to just thank our staff for giving our students such an engaging learning experience. A special shout out to our classified staff who are often working behind the scenes and don't always get that recognition. And so those holiday programs we're going to on our campuses, it's the custodians putting up the risers, it's folks cleaning the NPR in time. With all the absences, the clerical staff, food services, everyone kind of wearing multiple hats to ensure that everything goes smoothly from the outside. So when parents are on our campuses, everything looks like it's a-okay. But letting you know behind the scenes, we've been running for 10 days with all the illnesses and just everything else going on during this time. So just want to give a special shout out to our classified staff for ensuring that we can continue on with our school day for our kiddos. And also to the teachers. I know it's a rough time right now with all the energy of our students, but they've also been kind of troopers in this and ensuring that our kiddos are continuing to engage in learning and are able to be ready for Friday's break.
Would you say that the illness, is it predominantly flu? Do you think it's COVID again?
A lot of it
feel
has
for
been
that?
starting as I don't feel well, I'm sick, and then 2 days later they're testing positive for COVID.
Okay.
So that's what it is. And so it's great that folks are being, especially our staff is being very precautious. Like
Right.
when they are feeling sick, they're
Right.
staying home. And then when they test themselves the first couple of times, it's negative, but we're seeing that day on day 3 or 4 is when they're ending up testing positive. So yeah, it is a lot of COVID going around. And that is it. So thank you, everyone.
Dr. Harbeck. This is Sue. It's her.
Good evening. I'm going to start with a quick update. You mentioned the elementary bell schedule process. There, if you go back in time, about 2 months ago, we did put out a survey to the elementary staff regarding a change in bell schedule from what we started with in September, which is different than what we had last year. This idea was to extend the Wednesday dismissal to 2 o'clock, thereby adding recess time. And it sounds simple, but it is quite complicated. And it involved a lot of math. So we put together a spreadsheet that had formulas where you could add and subtract and see what the outcome would be. And the implications are really difficult. They affect lunch times, they affect when kids are in class, how many instructional minutes we have for the school day compared to what we now have. So after going through all that process with the principals, and they went back and forth with their staff, who were very generous with their time to look at this and help us with this, we are at a standstill. It didn't seem like any formula really worked for all 3 schools. So we're not giving up. We're still in there, but we are pausing during this time where so many things are happening at schools. We'll come back to it after the holidays with some new ideas, and then we'll bring it back to the board. The idea is not to shrink our school day, for kids and learning, but also to supply that time that they need to be together at recess. But we'll get there. So we're close.
You may not know this. Do you know what the smallest amount of time we have for any of our recess breaks is?
The smallest is 16 minutes at the elementary school, but the schools can decide how to use that. And they've decided to split that into 2 8-minute. And that's for the upper grade, the 4th and 5th. So they have 2 recesses, only 8 minutes. And then they have, of course, passing time when they go into their classrooms. Dana has 10 minutes.
Feels like a big time.
And then middle school has 10 minutes. So that's just for 4th and 5th grade. There's more time in the lower grades. So hard to know which way to go, but we'll keep you informed.
Pursuing it, thank you.
We absolutely.
And I would say too, I mean, thank you, Sarah, and Margarita, and others, and the principals, you know, for putting this out. It seems simple, and I know Eileen shared, it's just not, and especially when you've been operating with a schedule for 30 years or however many years we've been operating with a labor schedule. It has traffic implications, it has pickup implications, because we have one school is a T K to 2, and then you jump over to 3 through 5, and there's families that have kids at both, and so you can't account for all of it, but you sort of have to navigate that to some degree. So just wanted to share that, you know, it definitely has not gone without a lot of hard work, and I mean, I think Eileen has really carried the most stress on trying to find a resolution. So for her to come and say it's a standstill, means we just have more work to do, and every corner, every stone was turned over on this thing. So,
I know you've spent many a summer on schedules.
Love schedule. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Is it both 4th and 5th grade? I know 138, it's definitely 8 minutes each, but is Anza also 8 minutes each?
Whatever we do at one school, and that's a very good question. Whatever we do at one school, we do at all of our schools, so that you're going to see the same bell schedule across our district for elementary.
But I thought, I guess I thought that at Anza currently, the 4th and 5th are getting 10 minutes.
They get 8 minutes,
They do.
and I think they might be adding what you're thinking of is 2 minutes when they're passing.
Okay.
And Dana also has passing periods, and those are counted towards your instructional time, overall instructional minutes.
Thanks for clarifying.
Wow. I feel like I need to stop. Welcome. We're going to move forward. We have a short presentation. We want to provide an assessment update. Whoops. Wrong one. Oh, back. Tonight, we're going to focus on overview of our recent student data outcomes. Remember, this is our local assessments that we brought in this year. We came to you in September. We shared with you our CASP or state mandated testing results from last May. And we compared that to our local benchmark assessments from STAR that we started with the beginning of the year. This time, we're going to look closer at student growth and at the overall progress in the district. One thing I want to point out is we have so many great assessment tools in our district, and they're really founded by our teachers. So if you look at the arrows, formative and diagnostic assessments go on in the classroom. Those are designed by our teachers. They're check-ins, they're exit tickets, and sometimes a little more formal. But this is where they get real granular with their students to find out where they're at. The interim benchmark is where we come in. This is district-wide. And so you'll see this STAR testing, this local testing going on by grade level all the way through our district. And then, of course, we have summative, and that's our state mandate testing. Sarah's here tonight, Mrs. Nitsos. You know, no one talks about data more thoroughly and more clearly than Mrs. Nitsos. So I'd like to introduce her as our data and assessment coordinator.
Thank you, Dr. Harbeck. Good evening, members of the board, members of cabinet. I will try to keep my remarks as brief as possible. Tonight, we're going to discuss Renaissance student growth percentiles. These will be focused on our 2nd through 8th graders, as those are the students who took the most recent assessment. We're going to be looking at measuring growth by looking at individual students, knowing that not every child grows at the same rate at the same time. Renaissance has been able to take their years of experience to craft the SGP, or the student growth percentiles. They look at similar grade levels and similar academic profiles, roll that in with time of year, and are able to give us really specific numbers on where our students are growing. These profiles have been vetted over several decades with our entire national database. So we feel pretty strongly that these are a good indicator of where our students are. So in the green, we have greater growth. Students are indicating more than usual growth, that we have typical growth and less than typical growth. We have 2 sample students at the bottom. They are not Weisburn students. They're just random samples. The first student has a percentile ranking of 95. This would be a child in the high, meeting and exceeding standards. However, their student growth percentile shows that it's only a 19. They're growing less than typical. That would be a student that might need to be accelerated a little bit more and given little different activities. Student number 2 is in the 19th percentile. This would be a student who's not meeting grade level standards. However, their SGP is at a 95, meaning they are still showing growth. So really honoring a student's journey and looking at their growth. So let's look at how this looks in Weisberg. We're going to be looking at greater growth in the blue, typical growth in green, and less than typical in yellow. But based on our most recent benchmark, which took place right after the Thanksgiving break until December 2nd, this is our data. This is our student growth percentile data. 64% of our students were in greater than typical growth or in typical growth. That's a pretty decent number of our students who are really plugging along and doing and growing. In math, that number was 62. So our students are growing in these areas, which is what we all want to see. But then we get down to achievement levels. They're growing, they're doing what they're supposed to, but are they meeting grade level standards? These are static numbers. Static in that there are different bands that require different levels to achieve to show that you've met grade level standards. Exceeded and met, we group together. We isolate out nearly met and not met in order to really hone in on those different areas. However, Renaissance is adaptive. It's adaptive in its nature and it's adaptive in time. No child is expected to have accomplished all of the California state standards for 3rd grade by this point in the school year. So that it makes sure that exceeded standard does not mean that they're done with the grade level. This is how we're looking currently in math. I heard there was a laser pointer on this. Oh, I'm so excited.
Pointer.
Yeah.
Then you have to hold this. Or I can point for you.
Right here. I'm just making a mess. Okay, good. There you go. There you go. On the first metric, we have beginning of the year, 21-22. That was when we first started coming back. This is our end of year from last year. Moving down, we have the beginning of the year this year and where we are right now. That's the most recent benchmark. So we see a little bit of a low number here, but I think we're starting to climb. We want to see the red and the yellow go down and the blue go up. And we're starting to see that.
Sir, quick question. I mean, I'm sorry, I just have, it looks like it mirrors the beginning of the year 21-22 is literally almost the same as the beginning of the year 22-23. And then the same with the second benchmark. Am I reading that right?
No, you are reading that right. Yes, no, that's it has been our trajectory to see this beginning of the year was a little low, then it comes up, usually it goes back down a little bit in spring, and then it comes back up by the end of the school year. So but we've only been giving the math test to all of our students since 21-22. So we don't have years and years of our own personal data to fall back.
Do we have benchmarking for averages, normal, other experiences, other districts? It gives us a context for these numbers. I don't know if 27% is really great because it's lower than average, or if it's scary because it's well above average. I have no context.
I can ask Renaissance and they provide national level data, but this is really standards based on California's expectation of our students. So I can definitely ask
That would be great,
Renaissance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Sarah, I have a question. It kind of relates to the previous slide that you just illustrated. So if I'm looking at 22-23, that you were talking about the student percent growth.
Yes.
So if I go back to the last chart. If I look at 22-23 and I see 39% are exceeding, and then you got the nearly and the not. Do we have that student percent growth that tells us, you know what, they're going to grow? Do we have that or not, or is it too early?
It's too early in the year to tell, and students are growing, but they might still be growing and staying within their band. So the student might grow tremendously and he's still in the not, or she's still in the
Right,
not math
right.
category.
So, but that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Are we gonna be able to tell, like, are we gonna have, is it gonna be down to that that micro level where, you know, we see a student that falls in that nearly net 36%, but you know what? He's gonna be okay because he's growing at 95%. We're seeing that, right? So we'll get there, I guess, is what I'm assuming. Okay.
Yes, and that is actually, you're giving a sneak preview of my next presentation, which will be the predictive results. Because once we've hit 4 tests in the system, Renaissance is able to give us a predictive score on all of our students on where they will be by the end of the school year. So yes, that number is coming, but we're only at 3 tests right now, so we haven't hit that magical number.
Sarah?
Yes.
I remember before the pandemic,
Yes.
when we were doing LCAP and stuff, there were those other bands where we could see versus California schools where we were everything. So I guess it's the same question that Neil had about, you know, trying to help us figure out whether these percentages are good or great or not so great, you know, maybe if you get that information from Renaissance, it'll tell us, but just against other California schools, I'm, you know, also curious.
In my personal data debunking, I've been going through it, and usually what happens is we're about 10% lower on STAR than we will be on CAS. And that's run true for several years in reading, but since this was only last year was our first year of doing it with math, I can't speak to that with 100% accuracy yet.
And then the other thing that I noticed in the, I guess in the SGP data was that our math growth standards were not a lot, but it was lower, right, than our reading.
Our reading was 64 and our math was 62. Yeah, we were 2% off on growth.
So folks are not growing. There's not as much growth in the math or growth potential, I guess.
There are about 3 children in between the 2 bubbles that were not growing. We grew in math and then didn't grow in the other.
Your sneak peek at the next slide, I think, gives us some context to these numbers.
Yes. This is reading. Reading, we do have data going back to 2015. And I can say that this dip is pretty characteristic of what happens in reading. We call it the winter slump. But this happens in winter pretty much every year. And then in spring, it comes back up. In math, it was kind of the opposite last year.
You don't think this is at all connected to possibly the pandemic?
Oh, definitely. This is 100% connected to us recovering from, what did Neil call it? Our COVID hibernation. These numbers are completely connected to our students coming back up. There was a V-shaped growth where we went down in the pandemic and we came back up. That is not being seen across the nation. There's a U-shaped growth where we came down and very slowly we're recovering. That's being seen by some districts. What a lot of districts are seeing is an L, where it went down and it's just barely hovering at the bottom. We're definitely seeing more of a U-shaped growth. This is one of the reports that I wanted to bring to your attention this evening. This is called the Instructional Skills Report. Every teacher, administrator, everyone has access to this, and you can run it by individual student, you can run it by class, you can run it by groups, and you can run it by grade level. What it does is it takes all of the data from the students who've taken the assessment, and it tells you what skills do these students need in order to grow, to reach that next level, to achieve state standards. So this is an example of what it looks like in ELA, English Language Arts. And here's an example of what it looks like in math. So any teacher has access to this. They can run it for their whole class, small groups, a single child, to really set goals with their students on what skills do we as a class or grade level or as an individual child really need. You can see those lightning bolts. Those mean they're focus skills. In California, we talk a lot about our key standards and our critical standards. These are based on those. So my next board meeting, I will be back in March on March 23rd. That next presentation not only will have the predictive skills, but it will also include kindergarten data, as well as first grade STAR reading and first grade STAR math data. So we'll be looking at our entire student body. And with that, thank you very much. I'll have to take any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Close up.
Yep.
I just want to close by saying that Ms. Nitzos is extremely talented at providing data to our staff, not just in what you saw tonight, but we have several other programs that we use in the classroom to supplement our learning. Excel for math, ST math, and so forth. AR, she supplies data and teaches everyone how to use this data. It's no sense having these programs unless they do this sort of provide data. So we are really looking at our programs before we purchase or go forward with any supplemental materials, that they also always provide some sort of data for our teachers to use with the students. Nice. Thank you, sir. That's our Ed Services report.
Thank you very much, Ellie.
Yeah, thank you.
W. Edwards Deming, the father of TQM, equality, and Six Sigma and Lean Sigma, said, "In God we trust, in all else give me data." So thank you for the data, and I think that is really valuable to get a sign of how we do it. So, I'm nitpicky, but the big picture I really appreciate, so thank you. From our superintendent, Dr. Silvers.
Thank you, Dr. Goldman. I do want to say thank you to Sarah and Eileen for putting that together. I think it's really good to take a look at that. My mind as we came back from the pandemic, we wanted to see that V shape. We wanted to see, kids back at school, and all of a sudden, we see the progress to the levels that we saw prior to that. But I just think it's not realistic. And we're reading a book and people are going to laugh at me when I say this, but we're reading a book as a leadership team, called The Infinite Game. It's a Simon Sinek book, and just looking at it as not a win-loss type scenario, but how students grow and how we look at growth in people and individuals in particular and students over time, and that our mission to do that, especially when you're looking at this idea of engage, empower, and elevate, our students, that it's done over time, and it's something that as we're seeing that growth, those are the win points for us, and making sure that everybody's committed to that piece, to seeing students grow and really working through that with kiddos as they're going through the process. So, I thank you to Sarah, because in data, you see that, in data, you're able to see growth, you're able to see not growth, and then adjusting as you may see things that you don't necessarily want to see or hope to see. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. I also I'll get to more of the practical stuff. Definitely was a real pleasure going with Roger and Nelson to CSBA last week, a couple weeks ago, and being able to network. I agree with Nelson that some of the networking and questions that we're able to ask, whether it be about facilities, whether it be about construction or different type or the budget. These conversations are really intriguing. They're interesting. And they provide information that we know where to reach out to the people that we now have our network. So thank you for taking the time to do that. Also appreciate the school visit. I don't think Jonathan did, because then all of a sudden he had a lot of tech. Sorry about that, Brett. It is real easy to go through sites and find things that are wrong with them. And I do it. I know that, or not wrong, I don't think, but the areas that just need attention.
How about opportunities for improvement?
Opportunities for improvement or attention. And, definitely, Jonathan's been working hard on identifying those pieces, and our budget's finite, so we're having to prioritize. So definitely appreciate that, and appreciate just the time we had to talk. Really outline that. Also, I just wanted to say that, as we end the term, Dr. Goldman, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for challenging, me, for challenging the team. You ask a lot of very good questions. I know you made a comment, or Roger made a comment about asking questions, and I think that we really value the questions, partly because it allows us to prepare prior to coming to the board meeting. We kind of know, what questions are gonna by now, but we really but it's good. It's instructive for us, because we're able to go through the process of preparation in a way that we may not have. So we really take it as a learning point. But most importantly, I just think it's been your passion, for solving problems, your passion for helping people, your empathy, and all of those things that are really critical to being in a leadership role when we're dealing with people and students. I just really value the time being able to work with you and talk and chat. It was thousands of hours. I think you underestimated it. No, but who's I really appreciate you.
It felt like thousands to you, just understood me, so that's how it
Wow. But thank you for your time. And I will say one thing about Dr. Goldman's time. We handed him a pandemic. And literally in the midst of that pandemic, here comes Dr. Goldman as president, and it was no easy feat to have to navigate the many different voices that were out there, to do it with grace, to do it with dignity, to treat people in a way that we may not agree, with perspective or whatever, but you just have to listen. I think you did a great job of leading by listening, and leading by, just with a sense of dignity, and grace for others. So thank you very much for the time. I value it, and, hope we can still talk on the phone every once in a while.
I won't miss those hours. It was a joy. Thank you. Thank you.
That's it for me.
Thank you, Dr. Dillon. Word to the wise, by the way, you mentioned the pillars. One of the foundations of the pillars, in the model that we use in our organizational development work, Simon Sinek's a big part of that. You're reading Just Cause. Or you're reading The Infinite Game. Just Cause is one of those components. Just Cause is engage, empower, elevate, moved into the future. So as you're having these conversations, perhaps you can bring back to us what the where of the model I shared with you before looks like into the future. Where does engage, empower, elevate, and our current pillars take us? That's the Just Cause arc we're on. That's going to be informed by this book. So keep that in your conversation. It will help us in our vision. Right. All right. Let's now move to our consent agenda, which is items 6.1 through 6.7. Again, this is our new process whereby we will take them all unless someone wants to. I think the term is pull, but there may be another term. Remove or ask a question. Yeah, ask a question about. Are there any motions and are there any items that you wish to have conversation on in consent?
I would like the motion 6.1 through 6.7.
I'll second.
Hearing no conversation, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving to our action items, number 7.1, and this is our organizational, not a reorganization, because that was the future committees, right? So we have what I'd like to do now, are we putting it on the screen?
I just have.
Okay, that's fine. So the first one,
Filled out already.
yeah, we had talked about this in our last meeting in an effort to try to have a conversation and make this meeting more efficient, because in past years, we have gone through each one of these. So what has been passed out to us, and I guess the room, is the list of what we had talked about in our last meeting. I do think in the deference to the position, I would like to take 7.1 independently, as that is our president, vice president, and secretary. So I'd like a motion with a recommendation. You know what? I will make the motion. I'm going to move that we take 7.1 to establish our membership elected officers with Nelson Martinez as our president and Roger Banuelos with our vice president. That is my motion and my hope.
I'll second.
Thank you very much.
With great pleasure. Look forward to serving with you folks in those capacities. Yeah.
Why don't we let you have a voice on a comment here in a sec? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I was gonna say, do we get to vote on it too? There was some conflict of interest there,
But anything you'd like to say first as vice president and then to Nelson as president?
Sure, I'd like to just share with everybody, I really look forward to working with everybody as well. As we continue moving forward, there's never a shortage of topics and issues to tackle within Weisburg, right? We're a small school district, but we tackle some very large items. So thank you for the confidence from my colleagues here on the board to serve as vice president. Very much looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to just say thank you to my colleagues for their support, and I look forward to working with Blake and the entire cabinet. And I got some big shoes to fill, Neil. And I look forward to the chat.
Well, you certainly dress better. We are blessed to have these guys not only here for their expertise and their dedication and their knowledge and their vision, and with the advent of the bond and facilities before us, to have two experts on our board that are professionals in this industry is an unbelievable rare treat that we are blessed with. So we're in great hands, gentlemen, and very pleased to have you in that role moving forward. So thank you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Goldman, I was wondering, I was going to recommend maybe we recess to restructure. Maybe we do a quick recess and then we restructure board positions.
I'm good with that. Why don't we take a brief recess at this time? We are in recess. So we will now open the meeting, returning to recess. And we wanted to take a moment so we actually save some time to review the various positions and not do them one by one, but take them collectively. Dr. Silvers, thank you, Wendy, for putting these up for people to see. And Dr. Silvers, if you would kind of run through the slate, if you will.
All right, so we are looking at item 7.2. Sorry, we're
7.3.
we skip 7.2?
Yes.
Okay. So we're looking at item 7.3, 0.4, 0.5, all the way to, sorry, I just want to make sure I get it
I
right.
think it's 7.13.
7.13, yes,
Yeah.
okay. And on the screen here, we have Roger Banuelos continuing on as the committee for school district reorganization. Also, the Los Angeles County Schools Trustee Association. Then we have the Weisman Ed Foundation representative being Rebecca. The budget representatives, we always have two in these areas. It's Joanne and Neil Goldman. And then we have the facilities representatives, Nelson Martinez, Roger Banuelos. Recreation and Community Activities Representative. I know this is going to be a very, very important
Oh, man.
designation coming up here. Nelson and Rebecca. The Technology Committee would be Joanne and Nelson, and then Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion would be Rebecca and Neil. Just to know that's a new group, a working group that Dr. Ingram will help us lead. Weisman Da Vinci Articulation, Neil and Joanne. Then we have our LCFA, Local Control Funding Authority, would be Neil. And then the Local Public Schools Funding Authority would be Neil and Jason. And just the distinction between the first one, the LCFA, is all 5 districts that are part of the partnership would be Lawndale, Lenox, Hawthorne, Weisburn, and Centinela Valley. And then the Local Public Schools Funding Authority is the joint JPA, the Joint Powers Authority between Weisburn and Centinela Valley. And that is that. So with Nelson, I guess Martinez, I guess we can call the vote for these guys.
Yeah. Do we have a
motion?
Right, we have to make.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Rebecca. All in favor?
Aye. Probably back up to 7.2. So it's 7.3 to 7.13.
But thank you to everybody for your willingness to serve and for these partnerships as we go forward. Very much. Thanks to Nelson for serving as our president, to Roger as our vice president. Neil, thank you for your leadership. And Rebecca, everybody, good team going forward. Look forward to it.
And I think we have to go back to item 7.2.
Yeah, correct. Adoption of resolution.
Yeah, for certification of signatures. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Thank you,
second.
Joanne. Thank you, Neil. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Down to item 7.14, receive board policy for second reading and adoption.
This is on Narcan, I guess.
Narcan. We brought this last meeting.
Yeah.
And adopt.
You have a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is the approve the first interim report as positive certification, great, budget and related budget revisions. And Dr. Hasty, do you have any comments here?
We need to move motion before.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move.
And a second?
We would, yeah. We should get a second.
I second it.
Can I just make one quick comment? I think Dr. Hasty's gonna jump. You can. You know, it's I just have to say hats off. We handed Dr. Hasty for the interim as he started. So it's quite a task to come in and put together a first interim report, you know, that you weren't a part of the budget, you know, you weren't a part of creating the budget, and now here you are trying to make sense and listen to 5 or 6 different people telling you how to make sense of it. So really hats off on the work that you did to put this together. I know it was a lot of work.
Thank you. You know, I really appreciate that. And I did want to start tonight just with a big thank you and just overall I appreciate the warm welcome. I believe we're almost in week 10. October 3rd was that first date, that first day. I remember being at the board meeting, September 12th when I was approved. And as I've gone through these last, couple months, I just really appreciate the collective ownership people have in the district, and from again, the facilities, the teachers, and then to the parents. Just seeing the committed parents today at the celebration, it just means a lot. And so I really have embraced Weisner, and I really appreciate also being embraced. So to get started, we are, you'll see the first interim. I'm going to talk a little bit about statute. It's, I don't want to get too much, but I know, our team knows this board is very well informed on how this works. But I do want to kind of give some reminders. And as a good teacher, we do those anticipatory sets to remind people of where we're going. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Next slide. I got the clicker. I'm not used to this now. Okay, there we go. The big one. Oh, look, there we go. Okay, there. I did not add the animation for record. So up there, we reflect on the ed code just to be clear. 42-300, it requires what we're doing today as far as the report of our financial data twice per year, as known as the first and second interim. Today's agenda, or the evening's agenda, we're looking at a general overview. We'll start with that, just in the timeline and the overall process. We'll be talking about the assumptions, and that'll be something that just really defines how we go about building this first interim. Multi-year projection will be the next step, and just looking at the current year and the 2 subsequent years and the different funds. And then of course, the changes, we'll be looking at that down, later in the presentation, as far as what happened from first adopted budget, and I think that was June 27th to now the first interim, which is the end of October 31st. And then looking at the next, we would have considerations and just what we need to look at moving forward, going into second interim, and of course throughout the end of the year, and the multi-year projection in general. And then I will have some reflection on other funds as well. Next, are you? Gosh, I can say. Got to push the button. There we go. Okay. So I'm sure in some form, many of you have seen this. I will just go quickly and show you that June 27th date. That would have been when our current budget, we know now, was officially adopted. And I want to say, I think Mr. Greg Magnuson presented that one. And then we go to September 15th. That's when we had unaudited actuals, which Dr. Silvers presented. And of course, now we're going to this step today, which is by statute, it's December 15th. The Board of Trustees, and we're a day ahead, will have to approve that first interim report for the 22-23 school year. And then of course, looking down the line, the next step will be that second interim, which by statute would be March 17th, where we would bring that to you again before then, and then we would approve that certification. And so what are the certifications? Just a quick reminder. And I want to start off with just being very clear. Today we are certifying a positive budget. That's really, it was in the agenda, but we want to say that. I boldface it, I underline it just to be really clear, but what does that mean? And you can just jump down to the bottom there. We're certifying us, Weisburn, our financial condition. And again, for the district and for this current year and going into the subsequent next 2 years. Of course, we have the other 2 areas of qualified and negative, and we're not going to be in those categories. Good. Yeah. I just want to be clear. Okay, so here's the assumptions. And I want to, one thing that's not explicit on this slide, this is really the generalized assumptions that you're going to see. If you were to go to many other school districts, you would be looking at some of these same numbers when they're making assumptions, except for a bar like enrollment attendance. The big one that we're going to really hone in on today and talk about will be our increased local contribution, and really having to assume that our special ed costs have increased, and they've increased somewhat, where we're going to have an increase in our local contribution. And what that means, I'll get more into it, but we have to assume that this is happening due to the first 3 months, July 1 through October 31st, and what we've spent in that time. And so because of that, we're looking in the future. We are assuming, because of what's happening these 3 months, we're assuming what we're going to need to do, and that we're going to have to increase that local contribution. So that is a really major assumption that we got to look at today. Just I want to point that out to you. But overall, if we look at LCFF statutory COLA, You know, 6.56, I mean, that's gonna go down in the next 2 years. I know in the last presentation, I want to say the 45-day, the revised presentation from Mr. Magnuson, he talked about a super COLA. And so you see that 6.7%, which is that super COLA, or then what we call a COLA augmentation, and that's a one-time COLA increase. Student enrollment, we do a flat funding model. You hear the term declining enrollment and things like that, but we do a flat funding model, and we've remained pretty consistent over from last year. Yes, sir.
Quick question on the super COLA. With California state coffers being dramatically lower funded than projected, is there expectation that's still gonna exist?
We are assuming it is, and you know, but that's where we're at right now. But it's a 1-year deal.
That super COLA?
The 6.7% COLA augmentation.
It just seems. Okay, I mean, it is.
Yeah,
what
I
it
mean,
is,
we
but
have,
maybe
you
I'm
know,
gonna
again,
take a look at that.
we get our information from school service.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the school services have an opinion on this?
Yeah, and then,
So I guess just to clarify, so the super COLA increase our LCFF in forever. Right, in perpetuity, it's just, we're not gonna get another super COLA augmentation in the 2 out years. So we're not gonna get we got the 13%,
That's already happened, that's happened, okay.
and that's gonna continue forever, right, or in perpetuity, but we're not expecting to get an
No,
augmentation.
we're not gonna get another one, okay,
Okay, correct.
all right.
Does that make?
It does, just, I guess it makes us wonder, in the future years, if we'll be pulling back, but we have no knowledge of this.
Right.
Thank you.
And I think you sort of answered my question. So the super COLA is in addition to the statutory.
correct, yes.
Wow.
But going back to Neil's question, are we carrying that, or has that already been approved and by the governor?
It's already funded. Yeah,
Funded,
It's
okay,
funded.
now-
It's funded. Okay.
Cross our fingers.
There are a lot that we get.
Just suspect.
So if we go down to the attendance percentage, I do want to point that 94.5%. We'll revisit that a little bit later. And again, right now, just we're hovering around 94%, but you know, we'll talk about that as far as an assumption. We have to go with that assumption, but that definitely, we could look at that as an area of growth if we're talking about increasing revenues down the line.
Excuse me, does that attendance, does that include students that may be distance learning?
My understanding is, I'm not 100% clear, but I'm gonna say yes.
Okay.
And that's a district-wide. We pull it from Power School and just look at the percentage. And now this one is our certified 94.5% where we're at and what we're using for assumption.
You know, historically, we want to be in 97.
Yeah, that's where we
have
have
been.
been.
We did big time with coming back from COVID, and last year, you know, a lot of kids were sick. I mean, just the reality was, a lot of kids were sick.
And we're seeing it now.
We're seeing it now, so we're thinking it's not gonna be just a go from 94.5 last year, it's all of a sudden back to our 97, but we're gonna start seeing a trickle up. I would suspect that it's conservative to assume 94.5, that we'll see some jump from there.
We did the math on that. The difference between 94.5 and 97 is hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's significant. But I think it's better to be conservative with this number and be more conservative. So the only news is better, so.
Yeah, and that is gonna be a clear message for this presentation. We are being very conservative. And again, I think Mr. Martinez spoke to it, that there's a lot of uncertainties. People aren't sure where we're going, but it is a time to be conservative in the current situation. So with that percentage, we go down to the unduplicated percent. And again, that's, you know, students that are low socioeconomic, but we're at 34.8. I think that's as of, again, October 31st. I think we're going to get to about 35% on that. So that could be something we could look down the line, but we're using this number as an assumption.
Those numbers have gone down.
Dramatic.
Right, are we closer to 40%?
We were at
Yeah, we're
43,
trending
45%
down.
when I started 8 years ago.
That's we've been trending.
Yeah, yes, I saw that. They have done that. So the TK add-on is a little different, transitional kindergarten. We're talking about 58.25, and that's roughly about 2,800 per student. So it's about 160,000 of revenue that we assume in doing these projections. STRS rate at 19.1, it's flat across, but you know, we know the story of last year. I want to say that went up a few percentages from last year, but right now the projection is looking flat. And then the PERS rate, although it went up last year, we're at now 25.37, and we're looking at trickling a little bit down. And so that's our projection moving forward. That's something that's a little different than past practice or presentation.
Dr. Hasty, just real quick,
Yep.
I think Dr. Feedback and team, they actually finalized out as UVP numbers as
Just over 37% for UPP.
That's good news.
Well, but that also impacts our supplemental funding and our concentration funding and the lack thereof.
Well, but I guess in terms of the budget assumption, budgeting.
It's better than
It's
this.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember 40% was always the magic number.
Yeah.
Well, our district has changed.
Okay. And you know, this, I don't have my pointer, but I'm gonna definitely go through a lot of this just so we're really clear. You're looking right now, and this is our multi-year projection. The first green column is the total of the, where we're at with first interim. Now, I want to be clear with unrestricted versus restricted. Unrestricted are, you know, again, this represents our 01. You'll hear that 01 fund, our general fund. It's really where we do the majority of our operating costs. And by statute, it has to be divided up, you know, with unrestricted and restricted. Restricted, we're going to look at monies that have to be spent a certain way. They're monitored, and you know, we have certain audits, and we have a lot of reporting requirements. Whereas unrestricted, we're going to have more flexibility in that. So just to point out some line items there, you see the LCFF, that is our major revenue there. We're getting 25 for the first interim, 25 million. And then if you go to the second green bar, first row, we have 26.4. And then we're looking at 27.2. Why I just explained some of the COLA increases we're seeing with that. Federal revenue, we have 1.6, and then we drop down to 812,000. And again, some of the whys with that, looking at the multi-year projection, we are having a reduction of those COVID funds over time that were federal funds, and we're planning on some of that. State revenue, we did have a bump there. And again, we'll, you know, that's at 10 million when I show you the comparison from the budget, adopted budget to now. We did have a bump, and we're looking at two new block grants there, which run roughly around 3.7 million, and that would be the learning recovery block grant. And we also have an arts instruction materials block grant that in total combined will be about 3.7. So you're going to see an increase there. And so over time, as you go through that state revenue 10, and then it goes down to 5.8 and then 5.8, because a few things are happening there. You know, again, the expiration of the COVID funding, and then of course, as we spend our money down over time. Total, you have a question? Or okay, total revenue. Actually, I want to really focus now on that contribution. The contribution right now, and what does that mean, and why does it look like that? Remember, we're taking from the unrestricted fund, and we're not able to cover in restricted money. We have to pull over. So you'll see that's why it's negative and unrestricted going over to a positive in the interim for the restricted. And right now we're at 7.5, and again, that is an increase from what we adopted. And if we go across, that remains at that level. However, you know, this is a time, and we're already starting to address that money, and we'll get more into what that is in the next few slides. Total revenue, we're looking at 41.2. And then you'll see in the 23, the out years, we're at 37 and 37. And again, we have that reduction of some of the COVID money. But if we go on down to expenditures, you know, we look at certificated salaries, you know, it's at 17, classified salaries, we're at 4. You see we're pretty much remaining a bit flat there going across the board. And then as we get on down to transfer out, I do want to make you aware of that one. That's at 387. We had a discussion earlier about that with our preschool program. And the reason that's a transfer out is because, remember, this is 01 fund. The way we fund the preschool is through, I want to say it's 63, fund 63. You'll see that in your budget reports. So when we transfer out, we're transferring to another one of our funds and not our actual 01 fund. That's why it's called transfer out. But if you look at the total expenses and really, and I'll go down that green line, you see 41 for up top at the revenues, 41,204, and then you go down to expenses at 38.8. And of course, you know, you can look at it as a big picture, total revenue, we're bringing more money than we're expending right there. Now, and then you go to the next one, the 23-24, 37-37. And then we're getting into the 24-25, and we're at 37-37, and we're still able to expend less. We're getting closer though. The other thing, I'm just making sure I'm not missing any other dollar amount in there. Yeah, and I think yes, go ahead.
So
in November, one of the ballot initiatives that passed was the Prop 28 on the funding for arts in schools. Do you have any information about what's happening with the implementation of that and where that money would go? And, you know.
So what it means, how much money it is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's roughly, let me see here, we have for our arts implementation, it's about 1.5 million. We're gonna be getting an allotment, and then of course for the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant, that's about 2.2 million. And so what we do, we're working to develop a plan on that, because, you know, again, we haven't actually even received the apportionment yet, and so the next step is to get that plan together as to how we're gonna do that. We had involved stakeholders in order to make that happen.
So that's
We may be
the
talking
arts.
two separate, you may be talking, because the arts grant came last year, you know. it was-
No, well,
it was good. You're talking about the new.
There's a brand
Yes.
new
We're
prop,
not
right,
sure.
that passed, so I'm just curious if anyone has gotten
Two
a
separate
different,
ones.
yeah, because it's like
Okay.
1% of the state budget has to go to the arts and education, and there's unduplicated population funding, you know,
Is that ongoing?
yeah, it's a the new revenue source that the state.
There's a lot of
provides.
excitement about those dollars.
Will that, and maybe Dr. Harbeck, we don't know, but it'd be interesting to look at PS Arts, for example, stops its funding as a result.
Right, there's going to be guidelines on what we can do, and they're really strict, and I think that's what's holding up that and the governor's budget are holding up the idea of what we're gonna get from Prop 28, and also how we can use it. So that's still in play, but there is a lot of energy around this, and we're looking forward to bringing in.
We have no clue what that might mean for us. $100,000, $500,000, $10,000.
Not yet until we know.
Yeah, because I think the prop listed as like at least 1% of the state revenue needs to be allocated for this, but that doesn't mean that it's actually been implemented at that. So I was just curious if anything more had come out about that, because it seems like that might be something we would want to budget in the out years. I mean, you know, maybe additional, a source of state revenue at the very least, that's not in here.
One item of note, I just wanna, that 120,000, we are saying that we really do need to figure out a reduction of 120,000 based on this budget. And so that's something looking in the out years, you know, which, it's something that's very feasible, something we can do. But I wanna make sure you understand what that is. So that's why it's called an undesignated reduction. We just haven't said what we're gonna reduce yet.
So to that point, so I'm just looking at the far column, 24.5, we see 37.8 million in revenue. And 37.14 in expenses. I'm not disagreeing with the 120, but I'm not understanding what the 120 has to do with anything, because we're still exceeding revenue and expenses.
Yeah, so, and this is where we really got to focus on unrestricted column, because really that 120, we have to reduce that in the unrestricted. And so if you look straight up from 120 and it's in the 24-25 unrestricted, because that, remember, we have to protect our fund balance over time, and that's what we're trying to do.
We're exceeding our budget in unrestricted.
Exactly.
Here.
Right, and although we're total positive because we have delineations of how we can spend the money, we're overspending in unrestricted.
Correct.
Got it.
So one thing too is that we have to do this multi-year projection, obviously by year 3,
Yeah.
we're just writing numbers on paper. And there's gonna be things that happen between now and then that are gonna fix. I think the big highlight that Jason pointed out that I wanna reiterate is that we're spending more than we're spending more than we're getting. And so
In unrestricted.
even in current year, yeah, I mean, in unrestricted, exactly, in current year. So if you look at, because of our contribution from the general fund, because of our larger contribution, we're spending more. So we have to balance the budget over the next 2 years, so that doesn't become a problem in year 3. So we're gonna have to come back to the board in the future, hopefully a second interim, if not early as we budget for next school year, with plans to start reducing our expenditures in order to make that.
I've seen it. Am I misreading this? I'm seeing it that we're having a problem in year 2.
We have, yes,
Is that
that starts
correct?
in year 2. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
we gotta solve that before year 3.
Correct.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so, and then also what's the impact of Measure EE on the, where does that fit in terms of, do some of these
Yeah.
figures change because now we have this additional source of funding?
Completely separate.
Yeah.
So it is, I would just say that a couple things that we've budgeted for in CL that's shown here in terms of network infrastructure upgrades. Are now not going to be spent out of CL. So now we'll have an increase of, $1.5 million per se in our CL funds, because we're not going to use that for what we had intended and budgeted for. So there is a little bit of play there. It's not huge. It's obviously not 98 million, but there is some work that we can do there, and in a small district, we have such a finite amount of money that we're working with, and we have such fixed costs, that our ability to adjust costs is very limited, and we're really working with, I mean, we just have to work, we have to be very creative with how we move money, so one thing also that Jason pointed out was that, we'll have to now strategize how to take some of that $4.7 million as you see here, so that's fine, you can say right there, so top, no, go, but you go to the next line, this is then fund balance, you see the restricted dollars, 22, 23, 4.7 million. That can offset some of the 2.3 as well, so we want to be really strategic in how we roll that out, so that fund balance changes, it's more positive.
Can you back up just one sec, just so I'm just struggling to reconcile this, back up if you would on a slide. We are overspending by $2.5 to $3 million this year, first era, revenue to expenses.
Projected to.
How does that leave us a fund balance of 8 million? And I guess the question is that the most important thing here is where does that leave our reserves?
That's the next slide. Yeah, so.
Okay, before you do that, you mentioned, learning loss funding or learning recovery or whatever. Where is that? Is that some number? Is there some?
Yeah, so if you look at our, it'd be our state revenue. And it'll actually show up better, and I can go to a different slide. This is our comparison slide. Sorry, I go here. You'll see really the increase, and I'll show you where. In the state revenue, when we're comparing, we're going from 5 to 10 right there. That's where that's going to show up. So we had an increase. So when we're looking at the multi-year projection, right now we're not showing the difference, but there was an increase when we look at our restricted. Or the state revenue, sorry, where it says at 9.7, that was an increase from the adopted budget. So right now, that's the first interim. And so over time, we'll be spending that, but that's where that would be.
That's only in a particular time frame. You must use it in that time frame.
We have for LV, REG, I believe it's 2026-7. We have to have it encumbered or spent.
Okay.
And then I want to say the arts is a shorter time limit, so it will be time frames. In many ways, it's the new COVID money, but we have to figure, we have to have a plan.
Okay.
So Dr. Hasty, let me, so I was just sharing with Neil, because I
He's correcting
misunderstood
it,
him.
yeah.
We are seeing a surplus in this first interim from 41 to 30. We're seeing
Revenue to expense.
revenue to expect. We're seeing a surplus.
Yeah, I was reading it back.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is, we have a surplus, and then obviously in the following year, we pretty much see, we're in a little bit of a hole, right?
Yep.
So when I look at the multi-year projection for 23-24, where I'm seeing some significant changes as in the state revenue, right?
And that's the expiration of the COVID funding.
Okay, and then I see that what's interesting is I see a significant reduction in expenditure for some of these items like salaries and classified salaries. Am I reading that?
So
right?
if you look at, you're talking about from 4.7 to 4.709. Yes, that would be based on if we're moving people into different categories, as I understand it. But you see the classified, unrestricted, and I'm just going for first interim. So that's 2.9, and then it goes up for unrestricted to 3. Sorry, yeah. It go up to classified where it says 2.98. If we want to go across, we're just looking at that. And those two. So we see you have to really pay attention to the unrestricted, because that's our general fund. And as we go over, you'll see it increases in the general fund, unrestricted. See that? And then you go over more and we have 12. So really focusing on that unrestricted more so than the restricted, because that's really where it's gonna have more of an impact on our bottom line.
Nelson, were you talking about the decrease? I just wasn't understanding.
No, I see it now. Now he explained it.
Okay.
I see it now. So it's not, it's very little. We're seeing little, I'm looking at look at the green column and then you go compare to the other green.
Because your restricted is also.
So you get kind of big picture.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to, so it's that state revenue where we really took a.
It is. It's a huge, not because of COVID money.
I was just trying to understand, how do we go from a surplus
Now
to that? And now.
Yeah, it's tricky because the unrestricted and restricted, they move back and forth.
we are gonna get some additional revenue that's not part of this because of some of these new measures that have passed. and
But
things
they're,
like
but
that.
they're restricted.
That's why. it's-
Right, they're for arts funding, and
Right,
things like
okay.
that. We may be
You don't
using some of
understand
those
there's more
monies in,
money, but-
from unrestricted right now to pay for some of those
Yeah.
things potentially.
But I think what Joanne is saying is that it would fall in the second column.
Right.
Right.
But maybe it frees
But
up
it may
some of the
free up
money.
that's what I'm
Exactly,
saying, is that
exactly.
I think that's what Rebecca's trying to say.
And I'll talk about that a little bit more in the considerations as far as where we need to go, moving forward. Let me, I think this is really the bottom half of the NYP, just kind of breaking it down, so it's a little simpler. The big number here, that total surplus deficit, and again, this is for the first interim 22-23. We had this negative of 2.3, and that's that local contribution. And so that's the key issue we really need to address. And if we do the multi-year projection over time, it does reduce. And again, what's that attributed to? I mean, you could look at the COLA increase over time, and it will reduce. How?
So I have a question back to that, extra COLA, whatever it was called.
Yeah.
Super COLA. So that was a one-shot thing, and but it's, no, it wasn't a one-shot thing. It's ongoing.
Yeah, you get 6.7 for that year, and that keeps
And
that
that keeps-
6.6.
It's baked into.
Just like we get raised, we get a rebate.
Right.
Okay, and then another one, this is an important one, 3% reserve. We are maintaining our statutory reserve. That's how we are certified. We're doing that positive certification. However, if you go to the line below, and that's where we have that undesignated, that is our reserve above that 3%. Again, this is an assumption. We're looking at it. We're looking at what we've spent this first 3 months, and we're making these assumptions based on this. But you see, as it stands now, based on the quarter of spending, that undesignated money would be reducing over the 3 years. Yeah, so, and that's where we are already putting things in place to address that, especially starting with the local contribution and special.
Are we talking Fund 17, Fund 20 here?
No, this is, no, and
This is separate.
this is 01 only. Yeah, those are separate. I'll show you those balances.
I need to jump.
Go for it.
I just want to say, I think our big, we wanted to highlight some of the issues and challenges that we know we're facing in the budget. Is really in the first column, second column, third row down, the 2.33, $2.3 million that, is coming out of a restricted that we just need, that's our over expense, right?
Yeah.
And we need to have a plan to do that. Again, it's on paper right now because we're projecting it out for the rest of the year. And some of it has to do with, I know Nisha's done a lot of work in terms of reallocating aids. We actually, aids that we were paying for in our, from contract services that are now, that we're able to reallocate. That wouldn't show up in this budget. We already did that. But we already have this, number of people that are no longer working for us. And we didn't replace them. So we're going to see some change there. We're also going to see some movement from that second column or third column, essentially the 4.7 million. Also, that's going to cover some of the costs of the general fund that will also alleviate that. We didn't want to do that because we wanted you to see it very raw, be able to see this issue on paper, so that as we have our plan and we work, Jason and I, Nisha and Eileen work to really flesh this out, that we do so in a way that is clear. So we do plan, but that's the problem. And 1.7 million of that is special education increases from last year to this year. It's only less than a year that we see 1.7 million in special education increases. 380,000 of that is part of our preschool overage. So we have, I don't know.
And that's all.
Yeah, that was that transfer out.
That's all unrestricted. So that's all showing up in that number. So it's some of it. So a lot of it, we just have no control over initially. We have to figure out how to control it some way.
Did any of the mandatory preschool come with extra special ed funding?
So we really have to separate that out. Special ed funding does have the mandatory preschool, and that's different than what we're doing for the pay. And so we can't really mix those. And so when we're talking about that 300 negative, that the transfer out, that is for those pay kids that are, going to that preschool program and how that program, Fund 63 is running. The special ed would not be part of Fund 63 in that regard. Okay, so this is, I'll just be linear on this one just to go down the line. So you see the rationale here. And this is looking at okay, so first budget adoption, that was 27th, and then really a line by line comparison from first to October 31st, which is first interim. Just things to note, you know, you see the difference there, that middle column and on down. At the top of the difference column, where you'll see it starts with 2.1. That is the difference again with our revenue. We are seeing an increase from first budget adoption to first interim, sorry, budget adoption to first interim. And again, why is that? Because we have a collaboration and a few things that, you know, I haven't talked about too much, but the 3-year ADA averaging, COVID relief ADA. I mean, those are things that have kind of built that up over time. If we've had carryover, and you probably remember some of those things that have given us some extra revenue. Federal revenue, you'll see there, you know, we are, you know, dipping from, you know, where we were to now, and really that's looking at the pandemic money. It's, you know, going down, and then also the, and it's not much, it's just a little bit. And then also the title, we call it title carryover, Title I carryover, or the categorical funding, our federal funding. So state revenue, and there's that other line by line. You can see we did have a little increase in lottery from the adopted budget. And then we also had that some COVID carryover, but really the meat of that $5 million is that those 2 block grants I was talking about, roughly around 3.7 million. Going down to a local revenue, 239, you know, again, cash received, and not much there, but the big one really everybody needs to focus on is that contribution. Just looking at it, we have special education and routine repair maintenance revisions. RRM is not a big component, you know, of that. It is our increased special ed costs that have, you know, been the reason for that increase of $2.3 million. And if we go on down, you can see where the negotiations, you know, that created a bit of a difference, 3% ongoing. You know, when we look at classified salaries and we keep going down to, you know, the upgrade of the benefits, there was a bit of an increase there. Then you get to services. And so there's another $1.7 million increase. And that's part of that 2.3, over 1 million in special education contracts. And you know, looking at also, we had some pandemic resource carryover, but the big one with 1.7 for that increase for special education, as Dr. Silvers mentioned, you know, and every time we have, if we have an increase of special ed students, we have an increase of services. I want to say right now, you know, we're around 14%, which was an increase from last year. Also, you know, if we had some vacancies, which Dr. Dugal, she's been filling those vacancies, but we were using the contracts to serve. So that's really created a lot of that overrun. Going on down.
Let me just pause there.
Yeah,
for a
go ahead.
second. So on the contracts piece, I think as we hire, right, part of the reason why we had those contracts was because we had trouble hiring folks, right? So do we anticipate that we will continue to have those costs be as high there because we filled these vacant positions that we had in the budget anyways, right? Like, just, I understand that there were like large increases, like the number was higher than we expected, but I'm wondering if a chunk of that is because of these additional contracts we had to bring on to, right? And that's gonna go away, so it's actually not like it sounds like it was a huge amount, but we're not. Well, I don't know, I am curious what the audit that we've asked for around special services or special ed services will show. But my sense is that there are at least a portion of these that are not just, we're paying more for special ed service. We are, because we couldn't find people to fill the positions, and so we had to pay a premium to do that, you know?
What is it? Right?
Sure.
Yeah, so just try, like, we say it's 2.3 or it's 1.7, whatever, and it's actually something less than that.
Yeah.
You know.
So I do know Peggy and Jason,
Mhm.
Aisha went over, so and some of the initial changes, it was, you know, you're right, and we were overspending and, or as we started hiring folks, we were able to make some adjustments there and find some savings. I think the issue is if you have a person contracted, but you need to hire a person, you may have a little bit of savings because it may just be cheaper to hire someone, but it's really still a person per person. So, you know, it's so I don't want to be, just because we have high contracted services and we hire people for those positions, doesn't necessarily equate to savings. So
There are some cases in which the contracted service is cheaper than the employee.
correct.
We were just reviewing that.
Right. So that's the exercise that we're going through now, because what we have to determine long-term in our budget and in our multi-year projections is, you know, if this is holding true and we're seeing this increase in special education, we need to re-budget in a way that is allocated for that additional cost. That's just unprecedented for the district with, finite budget. So we would then have to free up some funding in CL potentially, and we may have to start cutting programs to be able to support that delta in what we're looking at in terms of this $1.7 million. CL is the most reasonable place to go to for that. So we would have to rebudget CL essentially.
I think I'd like to further the conversation when we have that presentation on the audit we requested.
Yeah.
Because it's also the type of services that we're offering. It's more holistic than just the number. I don't want to fixate on the number, but if there's some items as well that we can do in the offerings or how we're identifying students, all of those pieces come together to really understand what the makeup of the number is.
I do like the more conservative approach you're taking though, so I'd rather be on the wrong side of the right side of this than the rest.
Correct. Don't need to go every line, but really getting down to that 3% reserve, that's. We know, and again, this is just showing a $149,000 difference, but over time, we got to really pay attention to that. And that's our statutory. But when we look at that undesignated, we see that under there that it's dropping us by 642,000. So we really got to, that's what we're going to hone in on. Considerations, these are the big ideas right now, and we're already working on them. We're having discussions, as Dr. Silvers has said. We're looking at the local contribution with special education. We really need to assess what's going on, and we've already brought in a consultant we're working with, and we've already started giving them some of the budget stuff, and we're having those conversations. So we're really going to be looking forward to see what, some of the consultants' ideas around what we can do to really reduce that contribution. The other thing to consider, the one-time funding, we have the majority, a lot of funds are expiring, and we just got to really think about, we want to spend them all down. The whole strategy with budget, get your unrestricted spent before you even touch, or sorry, restricted spent before you get to unrestricted. And so looking at that, what services that are provided or supported by COVID dollars or one-time monies, do we want to continue, or, how are we going to ebb that down and make sure, it doesn't get into our unrestricted fund. So the other one too, you see that expiration of student enrollment. You have to think about the last couple of years. And again, I saw this too. We had a lot of extra money because student enrollment was done a different way. Let's keep it simple. As this, possibly expires, we really got to think that. And so we really got to focus back in on that 94% and how we can get that up, because, as we get back to normal, we have to be ready for that attendance to get back to normal. So when that ADA is, at 94%, if we can get up to 95, 96, 97, 100, right, we're going to see significant increases in revenue for doing that. Yes.
One of the things that has been on the news, and I haven't heard it recently, is that, for example, in LAUSD, their attendance was like half of, like 50% a day.
Yep.
So, but the state gave all the schools relief to keep your ADA at that higher level, even if it's showing a different actual.
The hold harmless.
And when is that expiring?
Hold harmless is already gone, like that, in that respect where we get the enrollment dollars. Now we're looking at that 3-year average, and you take the best of your last 3 years, you can use that.
And that's going forward, that's what it is.
So
Best of the last 3 years or 3-year average?
3-year average, sorry, I meant 3-year average, yeah. So it's the 3-year average, you take that, and then that's how you configure your enrollment. And is that going to continue? We got to assume at one point, we can't be sure about that. And so.
Of course, okay, I mean, that could change depending on what
Yeah.
the law is, but that's the law now?
The law.
I mean, that's state, is that ed code now, or that's how you handle attendance calculations?
Right now, that's how districts are being.
That's the recent change.
Yeah, that's
It was part of, I believe it was part of the trailer bill.
Yes.
Budget. So it's for this particular budget.
Yeah.
But it would likely, next year, it could go back to current year,
Thank
and previous year, higher of the current year or previous year. Which has been the
Okay.
traditional way we calculated it.
All right.
And
So
so.
that's really, that's.
Well,
Impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
that's
so-
the- Sorry.
No, it's okay, it's okay.
That's actually the main driver for our for our general fund
LCF.
amount
Yes.
for our LCF. That is a crowd LCF.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some question, what's 1% of our
ADA. I had that number, I want to say $236,000. I really believe, I think it's a 1% increase. Based, if we're doing a $10,000 calculation on average, and if we were to look at a 1% increase, we were looking about $236,000. Yeah, it's for that ADA.
So if
we could go up 2.5, you know, you just think about that, the revenue you could bring in.
So if we're normally at like 97% ADA, and right now we're trending at 94.5. The last number I saw from the budget projection for end of 22-23, we have a deficit of 642. That 2.5-3% delta would cover it right there if we just add our ADA.
Parents.
Including our special ed services costs and everything else, we still would have been at a good number. It would have been on budget, if you will, but that 3% is just a big number. But then that's part of the ADA.
Yeah.
It's a decrease, okay.
And the final thing is just, you know, we have to think about we have the increase in COLA, but again, we're not too much, but then we also got to look at the one-time monies as well, with the new, and we got new acronyms. I put them up there because I know everybody loves the acronyms, and I don't even know what they're saying, if it's admin, but I saw it on the CD. I was like, what is this? So it's arts, music, and instructional music materials block grant. And again, we have that LREBG. So again, looking at the spending plan about that, with that, and how that's going to interact and support our students. This just gives you our other funds, just to balance where we are right now. And again, we look at Fund 13, child nutrition, you know, I don't need to go through all of them, but it gives you an idea. We do have, you know, some extra money in different funds, you know, for different reasons. But we're doing okay in these areas. I know you've heard about the other enterprise fund childcare, that 63 has the liabilities included for the statutory pension. So it looks like a major negative, but it actually, if you take that out, it's not a real negative. And I know it is what it is, and I've heard many boards, you know, we try to explain that. But if you take that out, we're at that 380,000 that we're talking about with that preschool program. Is the real true deficit in that area?
Actually, can I just point out to, on there, I know, Neil, you asked about the Fund 17 and Fund 20. So, you know, Fund 17 really is an undesignated reserve. So I mean, that, you know, that is something that we take into consideration as we're planning out our budget, that we know that there's another several percent there in reserve, as well as $1 million in retiree benefits. I mean, you know, ideally we keep it there and we continue to move, but if we ever ran into an emergent situation, just to know that we do have these as reserve.
Always been there as the emergency back pocket.
Thank you. And Jason, when you mentioned the preschool program, and like, this is the parent pay preschool program we're talking about, right? So if we're running at a deficit of $380,000, is that correct?
Projected deficit right now, yeah.
So we already have prices for this year. But for the out years, we'd like to see that, I'd like to see that come back to us, because that's always been a parent pay with no intent to subsidize from the K-8 students. So I'd like to see that come back. And actually to make up the deficit, maybe over the course of a couple of years, if we're, because again, we have the rates now, but the intent has always been that that's a standalone program that we're funding. So I'd like to see like a multi-year projection, because it'd be hard to increase the rates in 1 year to make up a $380,000 deficit. So maybe we can see a plan that says, how do we recover those funds?
We could do minimal loss revenue neutral in that year though.
Right, so both, agreed. And then over the course of time, how do we backfill those funds? Because I'd like to, the goal would be to replenish those funds, because we have to basically pay for it now.
And to that point, I'm not sure, I'm assuming you've seen it, but if not, we've done an analysis of the local market in the past. I'm sure that's available to us to revisit that. We obviously have to be competitive, because we can't just price it for profitability. We have to be competitive in the marketplace. We have to know what the competition is, but we've significantly underpriced. I don't want to gouge people by any means, but we cannot do this at a massive loss, and it's just that balancing act. So I'd encourage us to look.
Agreed.
Well, there's a couple of pathways to that too, that we've already started looking at programmatically, as well as tuition. Tuition's gonna go up. I mean, frankly, I can't give a number right now. I can say, you know,
pretty much 100% tuition is gonna have to, gonna have to raise tuition, raise. Remember, this was like what we're seeing, this deficit is largely due to the fact that the laws changed at the end of last year. We had already set prices. Capacity. And capacity issue. So we're dealing with challenges today that we're dealing with when we set the rates. So now we just have to go back. We have to analyze the market and make sure that those rates are at least a break even or even a little more.
And that's been the vision, I think, of this board, is that we would like to provide that service as a break even, not a profit.
We're not gonna make money,
We're not,
but-
that's not the intent. It's just to cover costs and to provide that service to our community.
Understood.
And again, I just want to say thank you. It is a team effort. This is a lot of work. And I can't do it without the team that I have. This is the business services group. I know Silk is part of our team. She helps us a great deal. And then, of course, we have Araceli Fernandez, Candace Allison, and then our newest member, Gabriella Cornell. And we've also worked with Ide Bailey, Caroline Larson, who helped greatly with this whole process. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We thank you for the presentation, more importantly, for the positive certification, and obviously, we got some work to do, right? So, I believe we have a motion to adopt the first interim from Rebecca and a second, was it from Roger? Roger.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Last on second read here. Next item is 7.16, and this is a ratification of consultant contract with Ide Bailey for fiscal services support. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Next item is 7.17, approve additional funds cross-country education. Do I have a motion?
A motion.
Second.
Do we do seven? I'm sorry, Ms. Marquez, you say 717, 720?
No, just seven.
Just 7,
Okay, so that's
Take it.
717.
Yeah, just taking one at a time at this point. All in favor?
Aye.
Next item, 7.18, approve consultant agreement with autism diagnostics.
Could I recommend?
Yeah, can I just take motion 718 to 20?
Oh, that would be great.
I'm recommending that too, just because that's all for the same. It's an agreement with the family for an independent educational evaluation. So it's all the same. It's for the same.
Okay.
Different assessors.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So we have a motion from Neil, 7.18 through 7.20. Do we have a second? We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So Dr. Silver, I'll turn it over to you right now for upcoming dates and events, and then.
Yeah, it didn't show up this time on the agenda, so my bad. But yes, we do have a very, very important upcoming event, and that is winter break. We're just excited to get some time. The district will be open except for a couple of days in there, but definitely a slower time. So maybe we leave it at that. Because everything coming back, we'll on the 19th, we can do a more comprehensive look at some upcoming events. So, a slower rollout in terms of events in early January. So yeah, I think that's the big thing now.
When's our next board meeting?
The 19th. of
The ninth,
January.
that's what, okay.
Okay, and do we have a need for a second?
We do.
Okay,
Yeah. If we can do it quick, maybe we can. Yeah.
okay,
Like one last comment.
yes.
Dr. Hasty, if I can ask you to maybe ask John to push back on the 17,000 extra and say, we gotta do better. And see if we can get them to reduce that extra fee on the planters.
You can do that, yes.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. I think that concludes it. We adjourn our board meeting. I guess now we're going to close session.